Okay, so today we're going to be rewriting formulas and equations. We're going to write an equation for each of the following and solve. We're going to round appropriately, so if you're talking about many, make sure you round the nearest tenths, and then all the other things rounded 3 decimal places. Okay, so number 1, it says the perimeter of a rectangular swimming pool is 92 feet. The width of the pool is 21 feet. What would be the length of the pool is what we're trying to find. So first you need to figure out what formula you're going to use. So we're talking about perimeter, width, and length. So the only thing that has a formula is perimeter. So if you look at your formula chart, perimeter of a rectangle is 2L plus 2W. You're adding all the sides. There's 2 lengths and 2 widths. Okay, so before you plug in numbers and solve, I want you to actually solve for the variable that you're trying to find first, then plug in the numbers, because you need to practice with having multiple variables and solving for one. Okay, so I notice I circled length, so we're trying to find length. So I want to get L by itself. So first step would be to subtract 2W. So you have P minus 2W equals 2L. And then you need to get rid of the 2. So you would divide both sides by 2. So your length would equal perimeter minus 2 times your width divided by 2. So that's going to be one of your first answer. So solving for length. And then on the side, I want you to write the variables that are in your formula. So P, L, and W. So the perimeter, notice we're given it's 92 feet. Length, we don't know, that's what we circled. And then the width is 21 feet. So now we're going to take this equation and we're going to plug in the numbers. So P is 92 minus 2 times your width, which is 21, divided by 2. So that would be 92 minus 42, which would equal 50, divided by 2. So your length would equal 25. Make sure to label, so 25 feet. To check your answer, you can plug that back into your formula and make sure that it's true. So 2 answers, your equation and then your actual answer. Okay. All right, let's look at 2. The circumference of a circular garden is 1,256 feet. What would be the length of the radius is what we're trying to find. Okay, so formula, you have circumference, and you're talking about your radius. So the only formula we have is circumference. So look at your formula chart. Circumference, there's 2 formulas. We want the one that has the radius in it. So 2 pi r. And we're wanting to solve for the radius. So here's our r here, which means I need to get rid of the 2 and the pi. I'm multiplying 2 pi times r. So the opposite would be 2 to divide. So your radius would equal circumference divided by 2 pi. Okay, so we have circumference and radius. Circumference is 1,256 feet. Your radius is what we're trying to find. So plugging into this equation that we found here, you would have 1,256 divided by 2 pi. Now I want you to use the pi button on the calculator when you're plugging this in. If you're plugging in the whole thing all at once, you have to put parentheses around 2 pi when you're dividing it, or it's going to give you the wrong answer, because it would divide it by 2 and then times the whole answer by pi, and we don't want to do that. Okay, so when you do that, your answer, you should get 199.899, because we're running in 3 decimal places, and the units would be feet. Okay. All right, let's look at 3. You're finding the height of a cylinder. If the radius is 7 inches, and the total surface area of the cylinder is 967.12 square inches. Okay, so formula you would need to use, we don't have a height formula, we don't have a radius formula, but we do have a total surface area formula for a cylinder. you look at your formula chart, there's two formulas, one without parentheses, one with. So we'll use the one, it'll be easier to use the one without. And we're wanting to find the h, the height. So I'm going to solve for that. So notice I'm wanting to get h by itself. So the first step would be to move this 2 pi r squared. We are moving all of it, which means we need to subtract 2 pi r squared. So we would have the total surface area minus 2 pi r squared equals 2 pi r h. To get h by itself, we need to get rid of 2 pi r, and you're multiplying all that together. So the opposite would be to divide. So we divide by 2 pi r. So you have h equals s minus 2 pi r squared divided by 2 pi r. So there's my equation. Writing your variables down, we have an s, an r, and an h. S represents your total surface area, which is 967.12 square inches. The radius is 7 inches. And then we're looking for the height. So using this equation that we found, we have 967.12 minus 2 pi radius squared, so 7 squared, over 2 pi times your radius, which is 7. When you're plugging this into the calculator, same thing like the other one, make sure you put parentheses around the denominator, and notice you have more than one thing on the top, so make sure you also put parentheses around that. And also, I want you to type in pi in the calculator, not 3.14, so make sure you're using pi. So when you type all of that in rounding to 3 decimal places, you should get 14.989, and then our units would be inches. Take a look at 4. Says if the volume of a cone is 3,692.64 cubic centimeters and the height of the cone is 18 centimeters, what would be the area of the base of the cone? So formula, we're talking about volume, height, and the area of the base. There's not a formula for area of the base. Some of you might say, oh, we need to find area. No. We're looking for the area of the base, but there's not a formula for that. So we would need to look for the formula for volume of the cone. If you notice on your formula chart, it's 1/3 big B times H, but you can also write it as B equals area of the base, which is big B times height, divided by 3. So same one, when you're multiplying by 1/3, same thing as dividing by 3. So you could also use that formula, which I'm going to use that one. So I'm looking for big B, which is the area of the base. So I need to get rid of this 3. I'm dividing by it, so the opposite would be to multiply. So I get 3B equals big B times H. Then I'm dividing by H. So the area of the base equals 3 times the volume divided by the height. So there's my equation that I'm going to use. The variables that we're using, B, big B, and H. The volume was 3,692.64 cubic centimeters. The area of the base, we don't know, that's big B. And then the height of the cone is 18 centimeters. So we're going to plug into this equation here. So 3 times 3,692.64 divided by H, which is 18. Now, on this example, since we're dividing by only 18, you wouldn't have to put parentheses around that 18 if you're plugging it into the calculator all at once. Okay, so when you multiply and then divide by 18, you should get 615.44 or we're talking about area, so that would be square centimeters, or centimeter squared. Okay, last word problem. A car dealership sold you a car for $12,000. The bank financed the car with a simple interest loan. The loan was over 3 years, and the interest rate was 5.25% per year. What will the car end up really costing you is what you're trying to find. On your formula chart, if you look at the very bottom, there's a simple interest loan formula. So if you look at that, it's I equals PRT. I represents the interest that you will have to pay over the time period. P is your starting amount, starting price, your principal. R is your rate, which is your interest rate. Now, you will always see it as a percent. We'll have to change that to a decimal. And then T, of course, is your time. Okay? So notice that we're given the original price, so $12,000, so that's our P. We're given the interest rate, which is R. It's 5.25%. We need to change that to a decimal. So either move the decimal 2 places to the left or divide it by 100, and that would be 0.0525. And then time is 3 years. So we do not know I. Since we don't know I on this one and I is already solved for, that's your equation that you're going to use. So you don't have to solve for a variable starting out because it's already solved for. So now I'm just going to plug in. So that would be 12,000 times your rate, so 0.0525. The most common mistake I see on these problems is forgetting to change that percent to a decimal. And then the time period is 3 years. So you're just multiplying all 3 of those together. You should get $1,890. Now, if you look back at what we circled, what we were trying to find, we're wanting to know how much the car is going to really end up costing. Okay, we're not going to pay $1,890 for a car. Okay, we started out with the price being $12,000. This is how much interest we're being charged over 3 years. So we would need to add this back to the original cost of the car to get the total amount that you're going to have to pay, which would be $13,890. Okay, we're going to look at the back page. We're solving for a particular variable with more than one variable. So like what we were just doing on the front, except we have x's and y's. Okay. All right, so notice on this one we want to solve for y, which is the y here. Okay. Normally in Algebra 1, you would be solving for y to graph. When you have an x and a y, you solve for y to find the slope and the y-intercept. Okay. So we're going to have to subtract 9x. You have -4y. Notice 7 minus 9x we're not able to combine, so I'm going to bring that down. And then I'm going to divide every term by -4. -9 divided by -4 is a positive 9/4x. 7 divided by -4 is a -7/4. So once we get into the graphing, we would be using that slope and that y-intercept to graph. Okay, 7 and 8 are a little different because we have more than one y that we want to solve for. Okay, so again, we're solving for y. But notice here we have a 2y and an xy. We're not able to add those two together. They're not like terms. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to factor out what they have in common. They have in common a y. So I'm going to factor a y out. You're dividing each one by whatever you're factoring out. So GCF, greatest common factor. So you're left with 2 plus x, because those y's would cancel out. That equals 6. Now, if you notice, if you were to distribute that y back through these parentheses here, you would end up with the same exact thing, which is meaning that these are equal. These are the same exact thing. The only thing different is you're just rewriting it, okay? All right, so now notice we're doing y times 2 plus x. So you're multiplying those together, so the opposite of that would be to divide. So we're going to divide by 2 plus x. And you're left with y equals 6 over 2 plus x. Now, do not mark this out and put a 3 here. You can't reduce all of this unless all 3 of them can be reduced by the same number. So that would be my answer. Y equals 6 over 2 plus x. Okay, 8 is very similar. You're solving for y, and there's more than one y, but you can't combine those. So I'm going to take a y out. You're left with 2x minus 5 equals 8. Again, you can distribute that y back through, and it should give you what you started with. To get rid of the 2x minus 5, I'm going to divide it on both sides. So y would equal 8 over 2x minus 5. We just talked about it up there in the previous example. You can't reduce all of this unless they all can be reduced by the same exact thing. Okay, so that would be our final answer there. All right, last one. We're going to solve for h. Notice this is the area formula for a trapezoid. Okay. All right, I can rewrite that formula there as base 1 plus base 2 times height divided by 2. Same exact thing. Okay. So I want to get rid of the 2. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. So we get 2a equals base 1 plus base 2 times the height. And notice this looks very similar to what we were just doing over here. We have base 1 plus base 2 times the height. So to get rid of that base 1 plus base 2, we would need to divide. So the height would be 2 times the area over base 1 plus base 2. So that's solving for a variable when there's more than one variable.